Hi everyone, welcome to Living Open. If you're new here, I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Eryn and I'm the host of this show. I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a freelance writer and social media manager, a Reiki student, a traveler, and above all, I'm a seeker. So if you're a seeker too, if you're intrigued by that which you don't understand and you value following your curiosity, you are absolutely in the right place, and I am so excited that you found us. I found this week's guest, Kathleen, on Instagram, and she's honestly just the coolest. She's a tarot card reader, witch, herbalist, and I would also call her a spiritual entrepreneur. We talk about so many woo woo things on this episode, so if you love the woo like I do, you will love this. I've started getting really into tarot cards with my new deck, the Wild Unknown, that I got since recording this episode, and it's just really cool. I've been drawing at least one card every day, like she recommends, and have been playing around with different spreads in the guidebook that comes with it. So, yeah, I definitely recommend getting a deck of your own, which you'll probably definitely want to do after you're listening to this episode. I've also started and almost finished my Reiki training since we recorded this episode. So I'm feeling really conscious of energy and really connected to universal energy and to myself right now, which is really new and an awesome experience, which I feel like is really supporting me as I dive into tarot. We talk about how Kathleen got started with tarot, creating a spiritually fulfilling career. We talk about crystals. We talk about going down the unplanned path, how she learned to work with her spirit guides, her tips for starting a spiritual path and exploring different modalities, connecting to your intuition when reading tarot, to which I love this, to be a hollow bone, as they say in shamanic tradition, for divine energy and wisdom to come through you. She shares what she's found to be the key to awakening your intuition, her thoughts about how all these different practices like astrology, tarot, herbs, everything intersect for her, and how we develop our path and our purpose, and so much more. I'm going to get into it now, but first, make sure you go like us on Facebook. Living Open finally has a social media platform, which is kind of embarrassing for me because this is literally what I do for work, and I've not done anything for this show in the year, over a year, that it's been running. So, anyways, Living Open finally is on social media. It's facebook.com/livingopen. And I'm sharing new episodes, blogs, videos there. I just shared my full moon crystal ritual live there the other day. So check that out and enjoy this episode.
Yeah, so I think that that's a story that a lot of us are probably going through that journey now in our lives. And I think I know I'm definitely not anywhere near the end, maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe somewhere still in the beginning, but, you know, but yeah, so I actually first got into tarot when I was 13 years old. And being from this area, I went to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair for a class trip many times, but this one time I decided to go into one of the Witchy stores and I picked up a tarot deck, and with my own 13-year-old money, I bought myself one. And I wasn't really too familiar with it, but I knew that I was just really drawn to it, probably from the mysticism of it and just the weight that it held in my hand felt so natural in a way that I don't really think I've ever reflected on that moment until now, but I knew that it was something that I should do for myself. And when you're that age, you don't really question too much in that depth, but so I just did it for fun. And when I started to get into my tarot cards, and by the way, I got this deck that is totally not a normal deck. I don't know why I picked this one in particular, but it was not like a typical Rider-Waite deck that you see when you Google tarot cards. It's usually
Mhm.
the Rider-Waite that most people are familiar with, but it was just this really weird looking deck called the Tarot of the Witches. And I probably picked it because, I've always thought of myself as a witch, and I was like, perfect. But it was this really weird looking thing. And I think forever, it took me a really long time to actually really connect with it. But when I was going through the cards and really starting to try to learn what they meant, it wasn't until my dad actually told me that he used to be a tarot reader. And I never knew that until I got cards for myself and he decided to share that with me. And so I was just really, from then on, fascinated by the fact that I kind of had this in my blood in a way. And that made me even more excited and willing to dive into it. Um, my father has his own stigma to tarot now, so he definitely doesn't read it anymore, and he definitely supports me doing it now, but he just had his own drama with it, and he's been over it for a while. But um, he still I still find a connection to myself and my family with the cards, and that was the first step. But yeah, and so I was 13, and as I got older, you're a teenager and nothing's really that important to you. Um,
Right.
so so I just did it for fun for years and years and years, and um, kind of forgetting about it, to be honest, because then college became an important thing. And when you got the pressure on you to go to college, you don't think you can go to college for tarot readings. So I just kind of forgot about it for a long time and just focused my educational path on actually going to art school, because that's another big part of myself. Um, and so I went to art school, I went to college, I graduated, and then it becomes to like finding a job in that field that you graduated in. And so for years, for like 16 years almost, I really didn't spend too much time doing tarot readings except for myself in the privacy of my own bedroom. I didn't really share it with too many people. And to be honest, I wasn't really doing it every day. I was just kind of doing it when I felt like dramatic or desperate, or when I felt like I really needed to find meaning in something that was outside of myself. Um, in those reflective, quiet, private moments. And I think another reason why I really didn't push myself in all those years to really dive into it was because, to be honest, it's kind of intimidating, especially when there's so much lore and there's so much history, and you feel like there's so many do's and don'ts. And I think another big thing was also that little white book that comes with every tarot deck, in the box that they come in. Each card has so many different meanings, and so that's probably a big reason why I just spent so little time, because it was intimidating.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, it could mean this, 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 and this. Okay, I give up. So it wasn't until my Saturn return, actually. And I don't know if you're familiar with astrology or anything like that, but
A little bit.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm about to turn 30, and a couple years ago, probably about like 6 years ago, when your Saturn return kind of starts to accelerate a little bit, you're reaching your end, or the beginning, I should say, of your Saturn return, and things kind of keep creeping back to you. And for me, it was all of the things that I wanted to do for myself when I was a child really started to creep back into my life and my thought process and the structure that I was starting to build of my life. And so what that means is basically, um, all the things that I wanted to do when I was a little girl, or when I was that 13-year-old self, really started to creep back into my everyday thoughts. And I'm someone who, when that happens on a pretty regular basis, I don't really question it anymore, and I just do it. So for me, it was actually, believe it or not, the first thing that really brought me back into that realm of where I was when I was 13, and really diving into this witchy self that I knew that I was, and I kind of suppressed for 16 years, because I was just focused on my education.
Hmm.
And there's, in today's world, there really isn't room for that, or we're told that there isn't room for mysticism, occultism, tarot cards, astrology, whatever it is, in education. A lot of people still think that intellectualism and intuition don't go together. So you kind of learn to suppress that, very sadly so. Um, and I think a lot of people who are starting to come into their own intuition and spirituality now could probably agree with that, is that it doesn't, most of us kind of go through this period of where we have to learn to suppress it based on like societal expectations, and it's not until we say no and we listen to ourselves where we find that that's the most important voice. And so I decided to get into, like, listen to my inner child again, and get those tarot cards out of the drawer that they were in, and I started buying crystals.
Oh my God, yeah.
um, which is also something that all of us listening to this podcast probably love doing, or at least are starting to get into. And it's interesting that people who, once we start to um, really dive into wellness and our own spirituality, that a lot of us are drawn to crystals. And I think that's really interesting, but it's also no surprise just because they're so beautiful. Um, and so I started buying crystals. And then I started to, of course, like kind of really dive into like getting all those like witchy books again. I love books, and I really started to educate myself on um, just basically building my actual magical practice. And it's basically learning how to build my intuition. But at the time, I didn't really call it that. It was really just kind of diving into all of these subjects and things that always fascinated me. Um, and I think over time now I can say that was around like, started about 6 years ago, 3 years ago, and I continued with all of that work. 3 years ago, I did another big hit listening to my inner child again. And it wasn't until I got my dream job. So after graduating college with a textile degree, basically learning, like making artwork for fabric,
Mm.
and learning how to weave, basically learning all these dyeing arts. um, I decided to once again listen to my inner child, and um, I had a really bad experience with a job that really helped with my resume, but it was like one of the worst stressful experiences I've ever had. But that led me and it opened a door to really dive into my dream job, like right after that. So I was very grateful for that path. And then once I got that dream job that I've been wanting since I graduated college, um, I was literally like, um, I need to do something else. And I don't know why. I think what it was is because once I actually reached that goal that I set for myself, I've grown so much since that point when I first made that goal, that it wasn't that I realized that I needed something that was actually spiritually fulfilling, and not just like I have a job doing what I'm doing and I'm getting paid for it. And
Mhm.
I like it, but in the end when I come home, I don't feel like I've created anything worthwhile in this world. And so for me, realizing that, because I was such a different person than I was when I graduated college from that point when I got that dream job, so I was just like, I need to listen to my inner child. And I actually started to go to school for herbalism, um, which was a complete shock to me, but also one that was completely driven by an intuitive response to the fact that I actually wasn't happy at the dream job that I had for myself.
Yeah.
I needed to create, which was really important to me. And I think that when we're all going through this journey or something very similar, our own spiritual path, we really need to um, spend a lot of time with ourselves, really just listening and talking to ourselves, or writing it down. Or for me, I knew that I was always visually and creatively driven, so that was always important to me. Um, knowing what's important to you and knowing your limitations is really what's going to help you drive and like manifest whatever you need to in your life. And it's just a huge stepping stone, and it was for me too. And I've never looked back. And the reason why I listened to my inner child and I say that I did herbalism first was because my dad once again got me this book when I was younger, when I was 12, so like a year before I got my tarot cards. My dad got me this book on natural soap making, and it like inspired the hell out of me. I don't know why, but I was obsessed and so fascinated by the fact that plants can help heal human beings. And so I decided to just, it was like without even thinking about it. After being at that job for a week, I'm like, I'm going to go to school for herbalism, like during the nighttime when I come home from that day job. And from there, I literally taught myself. I was self-taught, and I'm still, you're always a student of herbalism, and you're actually always a student of tarot, and you're always a student of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I taught myself herbalism, beginner stuff, really having a lot of fun with it and experimenting. And then I created a business for that, called Primal Apothecary. And I still do that, and I love that so much. And it wasn't until this year so I've been doing that for 3 years. When I come home from that dream job, I still have that dream job, by the way.
Mm.
But you know what? It pays rent. I'm home from that 9 to 5 job and still do what I love. So I literally have created this path for me where I'm like constantly doing things that's creative and that I'm fascinated with, and I'm still learning. And for me, that's really important, and that really drives me. Really motivates me to learn more and to like be successful at it. So anyway, I it wasn't until this year where I really hit this much higher level of spiritual awakening than I have so far. And I really decided to, once again, I went inward and I listened and meditated with my inner child. And it comes out so easily when you do that. And it was just like, hey, you know what? Tarot's really important to you. And there's a big part of you that thinks that it's probably a little bit more important or a little bit more a part of you than the herbalism stuff. And um, I took out my cards, and I haven't put them back since, and that was in January. This year, I really decided to really devote myself to a much deeper level, like an actual study of tarot on an everyday basis. Um, they say when you start out with tarot, a lot of people say, and it's not necessary, but it's just some people say that you should pull a card every day of the year, 365 days, and then one more. So 366 days to really explore the tarot, like for a full year and a day. Um, but I mean, you can do that for kind of the rest of your life and still be like an eternal student and master at the same time. Um, and I'm really learning that a lot about myself now, and really learning how to develop my interest in tarot into a professional practice, and how to grow as an individual, as a healer. I really find that that's the most important thing for me. I just feel like I have so much to share and so much to give that it's important for me to um, really be able to hold a container and like hold a space for others. So self-care has been really important, and it is for everyone too, but um, going through this journey has really taught me so much about my own limitations, like I said before. And um, if I never pushed myself, if I've never went down a path that was expected and planned for, I wouldn't have learned anything about myself. You know, it's like when we decide to take these unexpected paths that we know in our gut is like best for us, and we're super motivated and we feel really good about it, even though the rest of the world is like, you're an idiot. But deep down, you know, like, no, actually, I'm the best. Like, this is totally the best for me. And that's like totally the fool card, too. Like, that's a perfect example. And that was me for a long time. And when you're in the full energy of that fool card, you're not going to ever be wrong. People might think that you are looking foolish, but that's also part of the energy too, you know. And it's really about like trusting your inner self, and because you know that it's the best for you. It's about taking leaps, it's about taking risk. There's no reward without risk, right?
Yeah.
So um it's when you like learn to push yourself, you learn the most about yourself, and you really grow as a person. And that's something that I've really have worked through this year, like literally since January. Um, and this year has been a complete transformational overhaul for me since January, with having like a really deep, intense vision quest almost. Just really intense meditative, like shamanic journeys almost, and really learning how to work with my spirit guides, and really diving deep to all different types of modalities, and just really kind of stretching my spiritual like bandwidth almost to really see what kind of vibes with me. And I think that what has been the most important thing besides like all of this, like I said, I have 3 jobs, and self-care has been number one and will always be number one, because um, there's no way that I can have a balancing act of 3 jobs without like learning how to take care of myself first. Because if you don't do that, then you're there's nothing left of you to like help and give and heal for others. So um it's a big learning process, but it's one that's totally worth it.
Yeah, I
I
love
don't
that
know
you
if
said
that
it.
answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have such an interesting story. I am really fascinated by all the different things you've done, and there are so many things I want to ask you more about. But the first thing that sticks out to me is you just said that you were going on a shamanic journey and starting to work with spirit guides. Could you talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So there's a couple, I don't even remember how I found this book, but oh, I do. I was in a bookstore, and you're in Philly, right?
Yeah.
It's Garland of Letters, that store on like 6th and South Street.
Okay.
Um, yeah, you should go. If you haven't been in there, you should go in there. Um, it's like basically a metaphysical like wellness store with a ton of books. And I was just looking in there, and I came across this book called Dreams of the Reiki Shaman. And I was just really kind of starting to get into Reiki. I'm not a Reiki practitioner, but I have a couple friends who are. And it was after I had treated myself on my birthday last year to Reiki for the first time. So it was really like after I really opened myself up to like what Reiki was and the experience of it. And so I was like, oh, a Reiki shaman, that sounds interesting. And reading his book, and I forget the author's name, um, where he talks about how he's combined the modalities of Reiki and shamanism, and went on literally like healing journeys and healed people with Reiki through shamanic journeys. And he works with his spirit guides and his animal totems when he's in the shamanic journey. So I was just like, whoa, that is so cool. And
Yeah.
I was like totally nerding out about that. So it's totally inspired me to to learn about that for myself. So I didn't go into Reiki, even though it's interesting to me. I knew that it kind of wasn't for me, and I don't know, there was just other things that like tarot and herbalism was like more something I really wanted to devote to. But um, so literally you can go on YouTube and type in shamanic journey, and like you can do a bunch of like all of the stuff, like developing your intuition. You can do it all for free. You don't have to go to a class. You don't have to like spend thousands of dollars. You don't even have to buy a crystal for yourself. You can literally like just quiet your mind and meditate with yourself. And that's almost like a shamanic journey. And um, I highly recommend doing it on like YouTube is a plethora of different types of meditations, guided meditations, shamanic journeying. And I kind of literally just started there. And there's a bunch for like finding your spirit guides and finding your animal totems. And that's how I did it. So it's not a like, um, like photographic way of, it's not like this amazing way that I did it, but like, hey, it was for free. You got to use some resources. Um, but yeah, so I recommend that. And when I did my spirit guides, it was this beautiful meditation of having three guides come to you. And ever since then, I actually work with them in my tarot practice. Every single time I pull a card, whether it's for myself or for a client, um, it's through them that when you apply your spirit, they're here for you every single moment of the day. And as a tarot reader, yeah, they're definitely here for you if you want to call upon them for assistance. And basically, you know, it's a great way to heighten and like amplify your intuition. It's just a matter of like practicing, like hearing and feeling for the signs. So for me, I feel like this tingly electrical feeling in my fingers, and I get like butterflies in my stomach when I know I'm picking the right card. And I kind of just ask them to be in the presence of the space that I'm pulling cards in, and for me to be a clear channel, like a vessel, or what's called in shamanism a hollow bone, if you will, like a channel for divine wisdom to come through me and talk. Um, and so far, applying that to my practice in a professional setting, I think has been much more helpful and has really accelerated my growth as I read and get more experience and stuff like that. So that's really fun. And I have a wolf totem. I love him. And you can like I said, you can just go on YouTube and and like see what yours are.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. I'll definitely have to do that. I've been really curious about shamanism for a while, but
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, there are just so many different practices and things that I'm interested in and trying to learn more about too that I just like haven't gotten to it yet. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. I feel
Yeah,
like you,
definitely start with yourself though.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I think I've learned, I think is the most helpful if I were to give any advice about that. I mean, like I said, I'm not nowhere near a master or anything like that. I'm still learning, but for someone who's been doing it for a little bit, at least if I had heard any advice in the beginning, I would say just focus on your own intuition. And I think that that will really help any type of, if you want to go further with shamanism or Reiki or whatever it is, having that like automatic tap into your intuition once you've learned how to build it can like really help so much more, as opposed to like learning about shamanism and then like figuring out what your intuition is and like how to work with it. And that's what I did, and it's been really hard. But I guess it's also like part of the struggle is what um makes it worth it, or like makes you learn quicker too. So I guess
Yeah.
whatever works.
Yeah, well, that's something that I love talking about with people on this show is how they access their intuition and get to a place where they can hear it clearly. So, how did you build that up?
Yeah, so like I said, someone who did do that by like taking all of these classes, and um each person kind of says the same thing. I took a some intuitive plant medicine classes, and um that, I think, for me, as someone who's really into plant spirit medicine and herbs, waking with the, with the natural world, I think a lot of us don't realize that that's a really beneficial stepping stone for us to learn how to tap into our intuition, is actually with plants. That has been really helpful for me in the beginning. And I would say to literally go outside of your, I mean, like, it's about to be winter, it's, it's the fall, but um any plant, any flower, any tree, anything that catches your eye when you walk outside and kind of just flitters, or you know flitters in the wind, that catches your eye, or like a rock that sparkles on the on the ground, like that actually is part of our intuition and part of the natural signs of this world that are kind of giving us um, a sense of, like, hello, I'm here. Like, there's other perceptions and realities in this realm that you think is just what you see and touch and feel. Like, there's other things going on, and that is part of like really awakening your intuition, is really being opening yourself to stop and listen, even to the breeze. And for me, the natural world, even living in Philly, like, when I'm like in those classes of intuitive plant medicine and people are living in California, and it's like these beautiful environments that people just live in, and I'm like, yeah, I'm in Philly, there's trash on the sidewalk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, like, it's totally possible. Even when I walk, like when I walk to the bus, like, I'll see a dandelion, and even if you like thank the dandelion and you pick it up and you hold it and you just close your eyes and just focus on breathing, you might actually pick up on an emotion or a sense of feeling in a certain part of your body. That is your intuition, like learning, just really being sensitive and picking up subtleties that we might normally be too busy to pay attention to. That's part of your intuition too. And I think um, in terms of listening to our inner voice, that part of intuition, that's a lot, personally, that's a lot harder for me. But the way how I've developed it is actually really trusting the voice that I have when I take a second, I close my eyes, and I take a deep breath, and I go, was that the right thing to do? And even if it's something as simple as that, just feeling in my body, being grounded in my body, taking 1 second to really just feel like, yeah, that felt good. Yes, I did make the right decision. That's listening to your intuition. So I think a lot of us can be intimidated by and everybody is so different too. But for me, just really trusting what I feel, and not questioning it too much, because hey, like, if that's how you feel, like, that's valid and that's legitimate and that's your intuition. If it feels right in your gut, that's it. It's certainly like there may be days where you feel like you don't hear anything, and that's also like part of the learning process with the intuition building, is that, like, yeah, some days you won't hear anything, and that's just as important when you do hear something. Like, maybe it's just not meant to be heard today, maybe you're just not meant to be, like, today's just not the day, and that's fine, because it's part of the human experience. Like, for me, that's a huge thing that I've had to learn this year, is that, like, yeah, you might ask for it, but it might not be today or might not be the day after. Um, it's just as important to, like, be able to be open to not hearing anything too, because we're human beings at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so they do say that, like, part of intuition is, um, have you ever heard of the different type of clairs, like clairsentient and clairvoyant?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had a medium on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was learning tarot, actually, have taken a few classes since, just to really build um, uh, a vocabulary and a language when I'm reading for others or for myself. And that was actually a big part of most of my tarot classes, was learning what kind of clair you are. And every single one of us does have a certain type of clair sensitivity. It's just a matter of, like, really paying attention to it. My first tarot teacher is clairaudient, so he'll actually hear songs when he's reading tarot cards and know that, like, he's picking the right card.
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah. But most of us are, and then other people are clairvoyant, like a lot of mediums are,
Hmm.
but not everybody, you know. And most of us are clairsentient, so that's when we feel something. And our bodies are made to be receptive and sensitive to, like, different vibrations, and that is being sensitive, that is being clairsentient. So I think that that's what I am, and most of us are. So really just being, like, really just diving into your body and being sensitive. And for me, it was really hard to learn how to meditate, to be 100% honest, because
Hmm.
I just have one of those brains that will not stop.
Monkey
Um,
mind.
yeah, totally. And it took me a really long time to learn how to meditate and to quiet it. And you know what? Some days I still can't do it. But I have to be, like, part of this process is really being forgiving to yourself and just, like, you know what, if today's not the day, then just accept that and forgive yourself for it. Or, you know, there's really nothing to forgive, but to just, like, hold space for, like, the fact that, okay, well, it's just not today, and that's fine to, like, totally accept that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think it's really interesting what you were saying about plants because when I was talking with the medium, she said that that's how she recommends people get started with mediumship as well,
Hmm,
learning to just communicate with plants and listen to plants.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I
that.
have to. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I had a really beautiful experience with, actually, like, my garden sage, like, in my backyard in my little South Philly house, like, in a pot, like sage in a pot. um I just, like, put a crystal next to it one day, and this past summer, and I just closed my eyes and I almost did, like, an automatic writing type thing.
Hmm.
And that crystal that I put in the soil next to the sage was almost like an amplifier in a way, because it was just clear quartz, and that
Hmm.
usually how clear quartz works, is like a amplifier. And I just saw all of these visions, and then I saw the plant spirit itself of sage just being this, like, wise child almost. It was really interesting. And that was the first time that I really, like, had a true experience with a plant spirit. And that was, like, a huge stepping stone for my intuitive process. And it was all just a matter of, like, not putting any expectations on it. I think that's when we get the most out of it. Because when you, like, go into a meditation or a shamanic journey on YouTube, you know, whatever, if you're like, okay, today I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do this, I'm going to see this amazing thing, and then nothing comes. And that's usually because I put too much expectation on it. Um, so yeah, and then another time I literally did a YouTube meditation on a past life regression because that's also something I'm obsessed with.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I with a plant, I burned angelica root as like incense on a coal, and it oh my god, if I that was like so intense, but and that was just from like a YouTube meditation, but um that was amazing. Like that angelica really activated some type of internal memory for me, and I like saw like a past life I had in medieval time period, and it was so fascinating. But plants really hold like are really like the gatekeepers for us. We just have to be there to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. I wanted to ask you, we've talked about all these different practices with herbs and tarot and crystals, and I know you work with astrology as well. So, how do all these practices intersect for you, and how does astrology come into play with everything else?
Yeah, well, um, I'm still learning a lot about astrology, so I'm very much a newbie to astrology. But a few weeks ago, I was able to really tap into my own personal like star chart with another astrologer. So we were both talking astrology, and it wasn't until that process. So this is very recent, like a few weeks ago, um, where literally seeing what was written for me in the stars with how like the whole journey I told in the beginning was already written for me basically, and
Wow.
um, that it made total sense, and it also made a lot of sense and really shed a lot of light onto the shadow aspects and the shadow areas of my life of things that are really dark and that really need to be worked through in order to like kind of progress your like soul in a way. That's like what astrology is here to help us with. That's what tarot is here to help us with. That's what plants are here to help us with. And it's really a beautiful marriage of um, the tarot with plants and herbalism and communicating with them, communicating with divine through the tarot, because I really see the tarot cards as like another type of vessel, um, like a visual vessel, if you will, for divine, for outside perspective. It's a mirror, and so is astrology. Astrology is a mirror um, of what is available to us and who we are and how we interact with the world and and how we're able to progress forward and work through soul growth. And it's all here for us, and it's all so similar in a way that like it makes perfect sense to mix all of these things together and use it as a healing modality to really help people for their like best and highest healing potential. So the way how I use it in my practice, like for myself, I usually you can't help others unless you can help yourself is like
Right.
what I said in the beginning, like of this whole growth process for myself. And that's kind of where the herbalism started for me, like learning how to like take care of my skin with natural products, and it kind of escalated from there. And just like how tarot was a way for me to like just see at the time really petty and mundane things as a way to like see it as a mirror and like kind of learn from it. It's the same exact thing. And so for me, I'll pull cards every day for myself to really break down things that I may be turning a blind eye to, or things that I'm are just everything. You can really use tarot for anything, but there are some things that um, you don't need tarot for everything. Um, but it can really be applied to so many different aspects of your life, and then using gem essences and flower essences from the herbalism standpoint. as actual medicine if you feel like you need it, going forward after a tarot reading where you're going through emotional, like traumatic experience. And okay, so I have some bullet points that I know I need to focus on going forward that I see with this tarot reading. And in the meantime, like you can certainly combine it with like plant medicine to really help your like physical body as along with your emotional and spiritual body too. Um, so there's a really beautiful connection in marriage that can happen in tarot, and that's in tarot and herbalism, and that's hopefully my goal is to one day really marry them into like this beautiful like uh, professional practice. I'm still figuring that out. Right now, they're pretty separate because I don't really know how to combine them quite yet. But I've been using like some flower essences here and there, and I'm about to make a Queen of Swords um, gem and flower essence actually. So
Ooh, lovely.
yeah, a brain power one. It's been helping me a lot. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of potential for using all of these beautiful things together. And then of course, like I'm just someone who's always like, oh well, I'm a Leo rising, so I'm gonna do this and here's why. And it's just I think it's fun and it makes so much sense because tarot cards are very much connected to astrology and actually so are plants. So it's been really fun to kind of connect all of these things, even doing it like on certain days of the week, like because that's all connected to planets, and
Hmm.
it's just been really fun and fascinating to finally have a space in my life where um, I'm able to like to just do what fascinates me and what drives me. Um, and I think that I never would have thought it possible like 6 years ago that I would be in this position. Um, but it's really just through like it all started from just listening to my inner child, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, and it sounds like just following your curiosity too, which I think is so important.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I think for anybody who's willing to open up to their inner self, their higher self, their spirituality, uh, it is important to kind of listen to that, to what drives you, to what fascinates you, to your curiosity, because otherwise, what else is really going to open that door for you to manifest, this like life that you want or that you didn't realize was possible.
Yeah. And I know you touched on this a little bit, but what you just said reminded me of it. I feel like all of these things that we're talking about, these spiritual practices, and just the idea of slowing down, getting quiet, and just listening, and then following whatever comes up for you, whatever you're curious about or fascinated by, even if it doesn't really make sense. It totally goes against our whole American culture of producing and valuing busyness and doing the things that make sense. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about how mysticism can coexist with our culture, and how we can have both at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh man. I do think that, you know, I do think that mysticism and wellness and all of these things that we're talking about today are really actually starting to kind of come into the mainstream. I think more people are aware of it and more people are accepting of it than they have been ever, which I think is a good thing. Um, Ultimately, a good thing. I can totally understand that a lot of people still have reservations on either side, and I do tend to see that a lot in some of the communities that I'm in with like tarot or herbalism. But I ultimately think that it's a great thing, because all of like especially with the like I told you earlier tonight that I went to school and I learned weaving. Like my degree was in weaving.
Hmm.
Like like a totally obsolete thing, and I've kind of made this life for myself where I'm doing all of these like obsolete things or things that like don't make money or things that a lot of people don't find important. But I think that it'll only shed light onto the fact that it's actually something that we all need. Like we all need to be healed in some way. And the more that people are willing to be open to see it, to accept it, that it is here and it's not going away, and it hasn't gone a long way for like thousands of years. It's still here. I think that says a lot, and I think that people are willing to come around to it, or realize that it is here to heal us, like plants especially. Um, they are here to coexist with us and to heal us. And tarot as another tool, I think people are much more open to seeing themselves from an outside perspective. Um, most people are. Some people still aren't, and that's totally
Mhm.
fine. Because there's an ego. We all have an ego, um, and I think that this mashup that's starting to happen, I think that there is definitely a place for it, and I think that you know what, like I said, I still haven't left my day job yet because the things that make money, like the things that are expected of us, I think that there's a big part of our society where we still deem that necessary and important in order to survive in this day and age. And I think that that's fine, you know, like that, like tired, like I think that one day we will all be able to appreciate and accept that um, these things are really important and they shouldn't be deemed not so or unimportant. And um, I think that the environment is really starting to change for it. And I don't know, I hope that, yeah, I hope that one day I really do see it possible for sure. And I think we're working up to that. Like, they say that like this is the age of that we reach the past, like past the point of age of Aquarius, but that was the beginning of this time period where we are finding it important that both of these, the spiritual life and the like mundane, like physical life, are just intertwined in the human experience. And you know, it's just, I think that now more than ever that people are willing to finally accept that and not laugh at it, you know. I don't know, I hope that answered your question. I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no, it definitely did. And it made me think a little bit about purpose too. And I'm wondering if you have any more thoughts on that. I think you've kind of been speaking to it a little bit. And I know you talked about in the beginning how you were talking or you were thinking about really wanting this like spiritually fulfilling job where you're creating something worthwhile in the world. And this is something I think about a lot because like
yeah,
the thing I do to pay my rent is definitely not the thing that I'm passionate about, but I still have
yeah.
to pay my rent.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally feel you on all that. And I think that a lot of us can agree. A lot of us are in the same boat. Um, but yeah, with purpose. For me, it's been, like I said, we're listening to my inner child, listening to my gut, being that fool card, and like being unapologetic about it, which is hard and it's easier said than done. But when you know that it's right, you got to do it. And um, through there, like purpose, there's a reason why I get so many tarot clients who are like, I want to find out if I'm going down the right path. Like, girl, yeah, I ask that every, like that question every day. Like, well, it's still a process. And I don't think that one day, you know, we know what it is. It's through the growth that we do every day that we develop that path and we build that path for ourselves. Um, like our life's purpose doesn't shine down on us. It's like we make it and we work towards it. And for me, it's like looking at tarot cards every day, and really just listening to my intuition really does help to guide you in a path that is for your highest healing potential. And through that highest benefit is where you are going to walk into that path that is meant for you. Like I said in my star chart, like my astrologer was just like, well, this is actually your life's work. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. Wow. And it was complete validation. So if you really like feel like you need to know, definitely do a star chart reading, and I definitely recommend doing it with an actual astrologer, as opposed to just going online, because you're really not going to get too much out of it. But um, that's a great way to validate it. But it's also like, that was, like I said, that was also just my ego needing to know
Yeah.
if I was down the right path. But trusting in yourself. And um yeah, it's like what I can just speak to that is, like I said before, it's just um taking the stepping stones is where you build the path for yourself. And when you're halfway down it, you'll know, like, yep, this is where I'm meant to be. If it makes you happy, if it fulfills you in most ways, then it is your purpose. If it's something that like truly drives you from your soul, from your gut, like, hell yeah, that's your purpose. Even if it's like something so mundane, but you know what, you feel really really fucking good about it, like, why not? I think that we all have potential to really find out what our life's purpose is. It's just a matter of, we just got to listen to it, and we just got to care enough, because a
Yeah.
lot of people don't care, actually, which is really sad. But um, those of us who are willing to tap in and really want to know what we're best and truly here for, we have the answer inside. It's just a matter of tapping in and listening.
And using those mirrors. Yeah.
Totally, yeah, yeah.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but I really wanted to ask you about how to get started with tarot. Like you said in the beginning, it's super complicated, and I'm super intimidated by my deck, and I'm sure a lot of other people are too. So, what would
Yeah.
you recommend doing just to get started with it?
So, actually, what I would recommend is, because it was so intimidating for me personally, when I started, to just get a deck. Everybody always asks me, what deck should I get? Don't listen to me. Like, listen to you, and you get your own deck. And you don't have to it doesn't have to be something that is given to you. That's something that people always say, but that's bullshit. Um, Go out, buy a deck that really speaks to you. If you dig the artwork, buy that deck, um, and open it up and put away that little white book that it comes with, and really just spend time with each card, um, just looking at them. And that's how you work with tarot cards intuitively. Um, and then, of course, like, the more that you look at them, the more that you really study them. And it's about just how you intuitively feel, like how the image is, like, literally, it's image analyzation, and how those images make you feel. That's intuitive tarot, and that's just as legitimate as like taking tarot classes with like traditional viewpoints, because a lot of those traditional viewpoints that are all conflicting in that little white book, are pretty outdated and pretty pessimistic. And
Yeah.
um, so, like, the tower calamity, it's through my own viewpoints and through my own study that, like, I actually really like the tower card. Those challenging cards are where we get the most healing potential from.
Mm,
And it's only through like learning to spend time with it and pulling that card for yourself one day when you get that and you're like, oh shit, this is my tower day. And then you go through it and you're like, okay, I learned a lot, but it wasn't the end of the world. And then you start to realize, as you pull those cards for yourself every day, That's how I learn. That's a great way to learn tarot too, is like, don't worry about what the cards mean in that little white book. Just pull a random card a day. And as you're going through that day, reflect on like what experiences you had throughout that day. When you come home, be like, oh, I guess that, okay, now I can see how that relates to the tower card, because this changed for me today. Or like, now I can see why um, I got the Ace of Pentacles because I got paid today, you know? So like, just relating them to your everyday experiences actually really helps you build your own language in a way that actually helps you remember the cards better. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's a
Yeah,
great start.
that's super helpful. I'm definitely gonna have to try doing that. I have the Rider Waite deck, and now I'm
Yeah,
feeling like I should get a different one because it didn't really speak to me. I just got
yeah,
it because I didn't know, and I was talking with the woman at the store, and she was like, "Well, this is like the classic one." I was like, "Okay, I'll try that one," but
yeah. Where
it
did you
had a
get your deck
lot. So
from?
ritual.
Oh, okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah, have you
Um,
you've been?
yeah, I sell some of my Primal Apothecary stuff there.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll have to look for it.
Yeah.
I'm literally there all the
Yeah.
time because I live right around the corner.
Oh, okay, cool. Um, yeah, but yeah, so I mean, I have a Rider Waite deck. I have about 20 something decks.
Wow.
Um, I know. It's pretty bad. But like once you buy more than one deck, it's like when you get a tattoo and you end up having 20.
Or when you
Um,
get one crystal, as I'm now discovering.
yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
that's a better example. Um, yeah, but I would, like I said, I mean, I have the Rider Waite. I think it's great for like people who want to see something that they're familiar with, but I don't actually use that. Like as you probably seen from my Instagram, I use a completely different deck, the Mother Peace deck, which is
It's
circular.
beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty hard deck. I've been with it for a couple, like probably 5 months, and I'm still really getting acquainted with it. But when you find like that really moved me. And I think that's the most important thing when you look for a tarot deck is something that you're really drawn to because it's going to make you want to learn and make you want to have personal experiences and reflections with them when you pull those cards for yourself every day.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm excited to play with my cards now.
Yeah. Great.
So, the last question that I always ask everybody who comes on the show is what does it mean to you to live openly?
Hmm. Um, that's so beautiful. I think for me, to live openly, would to live authentically with myself, um, to be open to accept the fact that it's more, I think for me, it's more of an internal thing. And then that way it reflects outward. But for me, what it means to me is living openly with my truth, um, living openly with the fact that I am not perfect and that if I can be a vessel for openness and fluidity and just really finding my own truth every day, and being open to the fact that for all types of possibilities, um, non-judgmental, um, is hard, but that's been a huge learning for me too, this year. And it's only through our own being open to love ourselves, I think is probably the most important thing for me that I would have to say. And then in turn, it really reflects outward. And then people like really respond to that and want to come to you as a healer. Um, I think, yeah, I think that like priority on that would be being open to love yourself and free, to be free in that, if
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah, it does. I love that. Can
Yeah.
you tell everyone where they can find you, where they can follow you online?
Yeah, so you can find me at daughter.of.wands on Instagram. So that's daughter of wands with a period in between each word. And I'm also my Primal Apothecary is primal.apothecary, and that's just my herbal business, my herbal store. You can find my stuff there on Instagram, and both of my websites are pretty self-explanatory, but it's primal-apothecary.com and daughterofwands.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was so great. I feel like I learned so much.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Erin. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to speak with you tonight.
What do you guys think of Kathleen? Isn't she amazing? I really love this episode. I really hope you guys did too, and I hope you learned a lot. I know, like I said, I did. And since we recorded this episode, I've really been playing around with my tarot cards and just really enjoying exploring and using them as mirrors for my own inner wisdom, like she talks about. So, make sure that you like the Facebook page, first of all. And second of all, I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm really excited about the next episode I'm going to be sharing with you, which is all about shadow work. So get pumped for that. And that should be out in possibly 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. But I will talk to you soon, either way.